Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartofilis.
Coach Patton, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you're one of the NBA's premier shooting coaches, but a guy that normally likes to stay in the shadows a little bit. So it's really a huge honor to have you on the show to talk about your career and everything kind of that's led you up to this point of being one of the NBA's go-to guys when it comes to shooting.
Well, John, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Like you said, I do like to stay behind the scenes because it is about the players and the work that they put in and the energy they put into their craft. Just try to be a guide and be as helpful as we possibly can. And that's pretty much what most of the coaches do here with the Mavs. And like I said, but thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
But I'm curious as to kind of where that passion really started for you, right? Was it something where was you in high school, college? Where did this kind of passion for love for basketball really take shape to now to where it's your life now?
I always loved sports. I played 3 sports in high school. I was a basketball, football, baseball player, and I've always been a sports guy. And as far as the love for the game, my love for the game really didn't start happening until in college, to be honest with you. My freshman year, had a good start to my freshman year at DePaul University, really struggled midway through the season. And to the point to where at the end of the season, they said, hey, listen, you got to lose weight, get in shape, make more shots, and improve your game, or else your scholarship's ours. And that was really kind of my first taste of failure. And lo and behold, I'm in the gym working out at DePaul, and I met a guy by the name of Chip Anglin, who's the Spurs player development guy, shooting coach, probably the best in the world at what he does. And I was his first ever guy that ever worked. And so he kind of taught me the game and looking at the game differently, approaching the game differently. So I basically had a personal player development guy before it was in vogue. This is 93, 94, when nobody had that. Maybe Jordan had it with Tim Grover. And here I was, a 19, 20-year-old kid having Chip Anglin teach me how to shoot, teach me how to read defenses and things like that. So my love of the game really blossomed when I was about 19, 20.
It's so cool. And then thinking about just kind of that process of you in playing and kind of getting that passion through having a great mentor and all that sort of thing. What kind of made you from there? Obviously, you learned all those things and applied it to your playing career, kind of transition into coaching and knowing that was the next step for you.
Well, it wasn't the next step for me, to be honest with you, John. So after I played in college, I played overseas. And then I came back. I worked at the Chicago Board of Trade. I was a trader. I traded the Chicago stock options. I did that for a long time. And, I've got a wife and 3 kids who thank you. They'll allow me to do what I do. They're so special. And I always did camps and clinics and lessons on the side. That was kind of my side hustle. And working for Chip, I would help him get gyms and things like that when I was in college. So I always did it, kind of knew about it. I always told everybody, I'm never going to coach. I'm a player. I'm never going to coach. I'm a player. And, being around Chip, running those camps, and then doing it on my own as a side hustle, I just kind of fell in love with it that way, cracking a few eggs, as they say, and just spending hours and hours and hours in the gym and, really learning my craft. And then in, I think, 2007, the market started to crash. Trading became very, very difficult. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start doing this full time, and started an AAU program, started Pureform basketball, which is a player development program in Columbus, Ohio. And I did that for 14 years before I started in the NBA.
And that's so cool. I'm thinking about that, everything with you're talking about with Pureform and kind of trading and doing all that stuff, and then saying, I've been doing all this coaching stuff on the side. Let me try to go all into it, 08, 09, and starting Pureform. What did that maybe look like for you? And maybe the first ever, like when you kind of went all in on those first ever camps or clinics you were doing with Pureform, and how did those kind of take shape? I'm curious.
Well, there were 8 kids in the first camp ever. And you know what I mean? So nobody knew me. Nobody knew anything about what I did, but there was eight third graders and 4th graders. And then there was 8 7th and 8th graders. So 16 total kids in my first ever camp. And it was perfect. And that was kind of my business model. I wanted small and I wanted intimate groups, and I wanted to really connect with the kids and teach and really help them understand how to shoot the basketball. So that's really how things started. And it grew from there to where now the Mid-Ohio Pumas has 75 AAU teams, which I still have a connection to. My freshman son is going to play on the Mid-Ohio Pumas this year. And my oldest son who's graduating played through the Mid-Ohio Pumas as well. So like I said, it's grown from there, and it's taken a life of its own. So I get back to Columbus in the summer, and I try to work with kids as much as I can. And but yeah, no, it's gone from 8 kids to thousands of kids.
It's so cool. I'm thinking about the early beginnings and starting with just 3rd graders, 4th graders, and then that kind of growing to where it is now, to where your children are playing it too, which is just great to think about. I'm thinking about maybe going from Pureform to kind of now the full-time stuff that you're doing with the NBA. I'm curious. I know you started with the Timberwolves. Maybe what did that jump to the league look like for you when thinking, okay, I'm doing this stuff with Pureform. These camps are going great. They're growing at a fast rate. But what kind of gave you that itch to try and see what the NBA would be like?
It was one of those things where the opportunity to be in the NBA, considering where I was at, the fact that the opportunity even arose. I interviewed with the Cavaliers prior to the Timberwolves. I interviewed with the Pistons prior to the Timberwolves, and all those things went well, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to do those jobs. And it just got to the point where I told my wife, I said, I think I need to do this because financially and the opportunities, the networking, what it can do for me, once you have the logo behind you. If I ever want to go back to just being Peter Patton in Westerville, Ohio, I could do that. And having the NBA experience, I think really, really has helped with that. And that's really what kind of got me going with it. It was nothing more than just this. I think this is the path that, the challenge that I need to do to kind of follow. And I did, and it's been great. It has been an enormous challenge for my wife and my kids and I, just because they don't live in Dallas with me. I go back and forth. I went back and forth from Dallas to Minnesota for a while. Now they're in Columbus again. So it's that having a family has been very, very challenging that way. But no, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Awesome. And I'm thinking, do you kind of stick more to the shooting kind of thing? Has that always been your forte, or do you kind of trying to dabble in maybe some other kinds of coaching as well? Or has it always been shooting?
I think the best thing for me to do within our organization is to stay in my lane. And my lane is to be a really, really good shooting coach. Obviously, I don't want to be boxed in as just a shooting coach. I take notes. I pay attention to what we do on offense and defense, and try to learn as much as I can about the NBA game to move my way up to become an assistant, or maybe eventually one day a head coach. That's definitely what I do. But I think the way you have to work in organizations is you got to stay in your lane, and you got to be really good at what you do, because that's going to help the team win. And that's what every coach should, and at least in our organization, that's what every coach really, tries to do.
I mean, 100%. And it's incredible hearing about just the career path that you went on, and just the twists and turns that it took. So thinking of your career in totality, it's very rare that we see that anyone really ever goes from something like Pureform to end up in an NBA position like that. It's really incredible, and it's something that maybe people think of doing, but it's so hard to get those things off the ground. I'm curious, maybe what made it so different in terms of maybe how you interact with players that allowed you to do that.
I think the most important thing for any coach, any teacher, anything like that, is building a relationship with the player, with the student, the musician, whatever it is. You have to build a relationship of trust and make sure that they understand this is about them. This isn't about the coach. It isn't about what I know. It's about what I can do to help the player, help the student, whatever it is. And I think that's always been my approach. And I've learned that from coaches that I've played for, from high school and college to Chip England with the pros. It's really been something that's been ingrained in me, and I've just tried to adapt it. I think the other thing is people forget about with basketball or football or music or anything. It's a people business. It's a people business, not a sports business. It's a people business. I mean, everybody that works in these businesses, they're people. And you've got to have a great relationship with people and really enjoy being around people and want to help people. And that, you know what I mean? Kind of try to be as selfless as you can, because, if you start becoming selfish, then it ruins it for everybody.
100%. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. And it's incredible advice in terms of how you should look at these things. I mean, seeing it as a people business that many people kind of, I think, forget sometimes that it's super important. So Coach, I know you don't do a lot of these shows often. So, I mean, it's a privilege to have you on the show and to talk about, obviously, your super interesting path and kind of all the stuff you've learned from that, because I know it's something I can learn from and our listeners can learn from as well. So really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me. Really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.